Okay, everybody, welcome to today's episode of Archangels Live. And we are, as promised, going to dive into the third layer, the outside, which is the visuals of what people see of your brand. And, it's interesting, Nicole. I'm looking forward to this because I think even here there can be a misunderstanding of what the visuals of a brand are. They just assume my logo and a color, but it goes so much deeper to that. I mean, even how a composition. And I'm excited too because I think here we get to really explore the expression of the archetype in a way that's cool, right? Because even just like you say, you're a rebel, it's the colors, but even how you do the composition of the images. So it's really cool. So I know what I think, but what would you say is in your bucket of what is the visuals of branding? Let's kick it off there of what it actually is.
Yeah. Have you ever heard that saying, you could tell a lot by a person when they enter the room without even speaking? That's what I think of when I think of branding. I feel it's the experience that someone has interacting, like going to your website or your Instagram feed or whatever, it is. There is an overall experience, it's like being in a restaurant and there's ambiance,
Mm-hmm.
before you
It's a
even
great
taste the
word.
food. So it's that feeling, vibe, whatever words you want to use, and it's also identity, right? Like we could tell a lot by people. You could judge a lot by a book, book's cover, and yeah, and that's too where I think some people kind of trip up because they'll pick something that's really not congruent to
Mm-hmm.
who they are. So yeah, we'll dive into a lot of that. But that's what my
I love the example you give though of the restaurant because I think that I mean, I've heard it kind of like with grocery stores and stuff, and everybody has like a character and brand, but it's so true. Like there's certain restaurants I walk into, and you get a feeling of like what the owners are probably like without ever meeting them, right? Because there's this energy,
totally.
right? If you consider like old wood and cool lights versus if you think of a really like a Michelin star when you walk in and everything's pristine and the artwork, like it all comes together. And I think that's a great example because you've got that's part of like the aesthetic. And like, I love that word you used. Whoops, what did you say? The experience part of it. And then on the outside of the restaurant, is it matching too, right? Like that's a really good example to kind of bring those two. And I was thinking too, because I mean, again, logo, which I'd love to we'll pop in too, because I'd love to share with the audience what your thoughts are and mine on do you even need a logo and do you brand under your name or under a business name? As I said, you've got the vibe, which is your like the experience, the aesthetic, and that includes composition of how you actually put things together, right? Which is really
Hmm.
fascinating to me. Your
Hmm.
fonts is a big
Hmm.
one. It's a tricky one.
Hmm.
Brand voice, right?
Colors, yeah.
Yeah. Well, just
Mhm.
the voice and the tone, right? Like
Yeah. Oh
an
yeah.
email
Hmm.
you're gonna get. Like if
Hmm.
you have this really
Hmm.
funky, cool rebel outside, and then you get, "Hey, lovelies, I'm here to fly."
Yeah.
You're like, your audience would be like, "What? Who's this person?"
Yeah.
Mhm. So yeah, it's really there's lots to dive into, and I'm kind of excited to.
Yeah.
I think we're going to show some examples too.
Yeah. It's a show and
Um,
tell day
show
class.
and tell day, show and tell. And I don't know if you want to start though, because I know so many people get tripped up on the logo. So many people. And
Yeah.
my question to you then is, what are your thoughts? In today's day and age, do you even need one?
Yeah. I think my first, so I'm going to say no. And here's why. So, one thing I think is what used to happen a lot, and I know it happened to me, is the moment someone's like, I'm going to go into business, whatever, I need a logo. And it's just a great way to like not work on the real stuff that you need to do in your business, honestly, to call you
Mhm.
all out because I called myself out on it. And it's fun, right? It's the fun part, it's the creative part. And that just shows you how, always look for ways you can bring creative fun into your work. Because if you get stuck on your logo for a month, there's obviously a part of you that's wanting to do creative stuff.
Yes.
But the modern branding today, I mean, there's definitely a lot that is like, a lot of the rules have morphed a bit, but there's still like rules of like spacing and white space and typography matching and all these things. But then you see a lot of companies breaking rules in branding. And I love seeing that because I'm like, they're so brave. But for a logo, a lot of what we are seeing in this space is people just kind of using typography
Hmm.
for the business name. For example, it's funny that we're doing this. I swear I have friends that are like, we have like te telepathy. Because I woke up to a message and my friend she's rebranding her HR business and just doing like consultancy because she does a lot of different things. And she sent me a couple initials of her name because she doesn't want a logo per se, an icon or a graphic. She wants her initials with like, her name underneath. And I was like, haha, that's so funny. We're gonna be talking about logos. But that's an example of like a lot of people just using fonts and typography for logos nowadays. But there's half like I think I see half and half really. I can't say one is
Yeah.
overpowering
I think it
another.
depends on the type of business you have,
Yeah.
which even there, again, it really is a choice. Because if you think of like some of the grocery stores, a lot of them are just typography. Whereas you think of something, if product based, well, even a lot of them, you're right, most of them are typography. I'm thinking of some of the products that I actually use because they want their name front and center as part of the branding, right? It does depend. Again, if you're doing your personal name, then for sure you can make some goofy thing initials. But I think also what we can kind of highlight in the logo is because you've got the logo, you've got just the brand mark, and then you've got a favicon. The favicon is the
Mm-hmm.
little circle that if someone pulls
Mm-hmm.
up, that I think is important because it brands overall. So I like the
Mm-hmm.
little favicon. And if
Mm-hmm.
you're going to have a little element just to kind of what I call a stamp on certain
Mm-hmm.
products. But I agree. I think in the long term, until you launch the business and validate it, and again, we talk about are you going to do it under your name or a company name? Why tie yourself into anything for too long? Like launch it, validate it, get your groove on,
Yeah.
and then you
I feel like logos are like tattoos, and I'm very much non-committal, so I've never gotten a tattoo. So I look at that like, God, it would be my tattoo, and then I have to like keep it for a while.
yeah. Yeah. You can
Yeah.
rebrand and we'll touch on
Yeah,
that,
yeah.
but you don't
Yeah.
want to be doing it all the time. And I think you're right. The core reason for anyone starting out, in particular, we'd be talking to here, is it does become a reason not to do the important stuff. It's like you're decorating the pillows on the sofa and the walls are falling apart, right? Like,
Yeah. Yeah. It's busy work that you can make an excuse about, but
hmm.
yes. And take it from someone like me I think I rebranded like 7 times within a short amount of time. And it was because of that, like not really feeling aligned and knowing what I wanted to express as my identity and trying to fit some certain mold. And that's where, we don't want anyone getting stuck in that kind of thing, that kind
No.
of endless spiral. It's not good.
What do you think's actually going on when someone does keep looping and changing?
Yeah.
What's actually underneath that?
I, yeah, thing is a couple things. I'll work on this because then I don't have to face like my bookkeeping or putting my offers out there and talking to people and trying to get business. There's that part because it's something that pe people use a lot. I hear it a lot as their thing that they're working on in their business. And
Hmm.
like, yeah, you're working on your website. It's been 10 months and you're still working on your not ready to launch yet? What's going on? Sarah and I both know how to like see through the BS that we can call ourselves out on. So there's that part. And there's also like it does feel a bit to me like committing to something and when you're not 100% sure, then you might find yourself going, I like what she's doing in her brand, so I'll just change it and whip up some new color palette and change my typography for the 10th time because there's a bit of like FOMO or the grass is greener. Like, if I do it this way, maybe I'll stand out more. So, but all of that to say is that there's a real deep inner thing about maybe being a little afraid to commit to the real you that wants to be expressed in this personal brand. That's why I think companies have it a little easier, like
Hmm.
businesses that are not just focused on one person, is because they can pick an identity and go with it. And it's usually tied to the type of clientele and audience they're serving. But when it's yourself, it feels personal, maybe a little
Hmm.
raw and vulnerable, or they're trying too hard to appeal to the audience and kind of losing themselves in translation.
You bring up a good point, and it's true. I think in a lot of industries, and especially like in branding and marketing for people, everyone can do such a great job for other people, but when it's their own, I mean, we deal with a lot of people who actually work in branding and marketing for their own brands because they're like, ah, this is why we bring
Hmm.
people in, right? Because it does. There's that self that suddenly it becomes deeper. And you're right, it is a little bit easier as a larger corporation because that emotional kind of connection of this is who I am, it's much more strategic when it comes to large business. It's like, okay, who are we picking? What's the audience? What would they go with? I also think in what you said, there's the committal part. And for me, and it ties in again very much with the archetypes because you see people following the trends. Let's say the Pinterest trends, color, Canva trends, like that color.
Hmm.
Okay, but does it represent who you are and how you want to be? And for myself too, I was like, these look, I mean, things look pretty. I worked in design for years. I was like, pretty, but is it really something that I want to like, I'm proud of to go forward because it does represent who I am and what I stand for and the style and tone. And it took me a while to kind of play with. And I think for me, that's what I love the most is if people can realize that you can play around it a bit. Like, don't launch the thing and then don't worry about it after, right? Like you can pick a different envelope. But it very much is definitely when people are flip-flopping all the time, rather than it being from inside out, they're trying to catch. Like that could be good. That could be good. And that's
Hmm.
great. Like you talk about the closet all the time. And yeah, when it comes to a branding, give yourself a little bit more grace to actually connect to who
Hmm.
you are. And you can, if you want to tie in, I don't know if they're ready to bring it in here, but that to me is usually the biggest chokehold is they're trying to put on something they think is right for them, not
Hmm.
express who they actually are. And we talked about in the other two episodes a lot of times because they haven't done that work. We talk about this being the third layer, right? Our first one was identity.
Hmm.
Then we moved into like the positioning and same and the visuals third. So if you try and start with the third element and you haven't done the pre-work, it makes it that much harder.
Yeah, it's like you're trying to decorate a house that hasn't even been built. You don't know
Exactly.
what the room shapes are and the lighting
A garage
and
full of elements.
yeah, garage full of elements for sure. Yeah, this is probably one of my favorite things to talk about just because I've always been a very visual person and having a clothing background, like I love, love, love design and looking at what story are we telling in the design or the brand. And when we have though a formula, so to speak, or a template or something, I think that does help people. And I know from working with entrepreneurs who are very confused and all over the place, once they understood through the lens of the archetype, it could kind of help rein them in a little bit. Not to say you have to
Hmm.
be in a box. You're not saying that. So all you rebels and stuff out there, no one's putting you in a box. It's just kind of helping you. It's like if you had a stylist bring you stuff because they base it on they know you, they know your vibe, they know what you're comfortable in, and they bring you rack. Can you imagine, Sarah, like having someone just wheel in racks of clothes that because they it really suits you, your personality, all the things. Like how much easier it would be to have good clothing that you love, right? It's designed specifically for your vibe. So that's what I equate. I use a lot of analogies like that. So
Yeah, and
yeah.
it's perfect. I mean, it's funny the clothes one is more likely be the one running around getting clothes for someone because I mean when I did the interior design because I always loved it, but it was more in spaces than clothing, and it was any client I had, they would give me like some generic, and it really was so key to me to understand them, the life
Hmm.
they're having, so that the space we
Hmm.
designed was something that uplifted them, but was actually met their lifestyle, met their tones,
Hmm.
and even like the layouts and how busy and artwork, like it all plays. And like you talk about the rebels, let's say you pick rebel colors, and that's why I'm saying composition actually can be huge. So you pick these really like bold and edgy, and maybe you get a font that's like I don't know if it's still cool, like something kind of edgy.
Marker, kind of thick
Yeah,
marker.
right. But
Yeah.
then you suddenly have like super delicate images and large
Pastel.
white space. Like that's what I'm saying, composition too, like the layout,
Yeah.
like it all. And you go back to that restaurant analogy, which I love, is because the cover and the inside, you want it to match and blend. Otherwise, it gives off kind of
Yeah.
the heebie-jeebies.
Yeah.
And I think that's
Yeah.
where people get stuck because they know they're like, it looks really good. Why am I not aligning to it? Why am I not feeling
Yeah.
confident to speak? Why am I? Because you're like, you're putting up a menu for the Michelin star where you're serving fish and chips inside there or something.
Yeah. Cohesiveness. Yes. Yes. Yes.
Nice, nice. So I don't know. I know was there a sample where because we kind of talk about what's missing. We talk about, again, logos, the vibe, the acoustic. For me, really, a lot of it comes down to is that piece of who am I and what's
Yeah.
natural, right?
Yeah.
And so I don't know if you want to show some of the examples that
Yeah,
you.
yeah. So first, let's talk about like the components because I think that helps. And then once you understand the components, we're going to show you some like brands in real life where you can then kind of see like, yeah, that's what she's talking about. So
Mhm.
I'm going to share my screen in just a second here. So can you see this real fast?
Mhm.
The brand? Okay. So for example, if a designer's doing your branding, they're going to create something what's called brand guidelines. And I'm not going to go through it really detailed for the time, but one thing that helps is understanding your brand story. And that's why like we talk about like who you are and being able to share the you that's in the
Mhm.
brand because that does influence the story. That like this restaurant analogy, the restaurant is telling a story. So if thing parts aren't jiving together, it feels off. So
Yeah.
this
This goes kind of
that
with the identity too, right?
yes, yes. So first having a story, a vision, how you interact with your customer, your audience, and how you want your audience to feel when they're interacting with you. That's a big part I think people don't think about is how do you want your audience to feel when they're
Mm-hmm.
interacting with you. And that's why I love our quiz because it asks questions to help kind of narrow down like do you want them to feel inspired and uplifted or do you want them to feel like they're getting a big warm hug, things like that really matter. So when you have a brand personality and narrow it down with some words that to describe, that guides so much of the visual and
Mm-hmm.
aesthetics from typography and images and colors and all of it. So using this example of a previous client of mine, they created a membership community on Skool for women surfers and primarily for women surfers that may be in later in life, have anxiety or nervousness or fears about entering the water and learning to surf. And I really loved the story of their brand. And it's a husband and wife duo. And when they did their
Cool.
archetype quiz, they got caregiver, but it was like kind of balanced too with the every person. They call it, on the typical studies you or the quizzes you do, it's like either called the everyman or the girl guy next door, but we'll just say every person to be gender neutral. So looking at how to bring that into the brand is is really fun for me. So I can show you that example of how, we came up with the logo of, this font and the surfboards, very clean, minimal they wanted from the font, like clean, but like a little fun.
A little playful, yeah. A little
Yeah, a little playful,
rounded,
little
not so sharp
fun.
edges.
Yeah, but it all like complements each other. And modern, I think, is the word too that I felt from them. They're modern. So when you go through picking that and then it comes to the colors, caregiver and guy or girl next door colors tend to be, they can have some fun pops like the oranges in here, but they also want to evoke a feeling of like you feel cared for, you feel comfortable. You don't want to shock people with this brand. You want them to feel relaxed. And since they're a surf company, we had
You
some
didn't use a
ocean.
shark? Come on.
We had some oceany Colors, and
Yeah.
they're an Australian company too. So like their whole lives are about surfing in Australia, if you know any Australians. So that's where the color palette came, very grounded and earth, ocean themed. And then,
Ocean sun, very cool.
yeah, and then we look at pictures, and it's always like about people having fun in the water, learning, experiencing like being a newbie, like showing that it's okay to be a newbie and
Well, even
get
that they all like the images, nobody's alone.
exactly,
That
exactly. The
speaks something,
caregiver was
right?
there. Yeah, the caregiver's all about like we're a community, and that was big in
Mm-hmm.
their personality. So I wanted to show you guys this example because then you can kind of translate how I got the caregiver and every person to kind of blend together cohesively. So, and it's for women too, but there's a male as part of the brand, so we couldn't make it super, foofy with pinks and stuff because
Well, you
there
went
is,
through it quick though too, because
yeah.
there's I think we could do a whole episode just with that thing because if you look at like the typography, what some people don't realize how important, like it's a mastery almost, but like how you
Hmm.
have a sans serif and a serif, and like when
Hmm.
do you actually use the script and the sizing of it? And that's why I said people just think of brand like logo. It really is very detailed and large portion
Yeah.
of, I mean, if you look at how many pages you had there of like the thickness of the lines and the
Yep.
sizes and where do you use them, like because so, and I think that's where, I mean, I'm guilty of it too sometimes, is like I'll do a post and am I translating those exact, because even just making sure that those colors and the font is used throughout
Hmm.
everything you use, whether it be the freebie, whether it be a social media, whether it be
Hmm.
your website, like just that small piece of cohesiveness and consistency creates a sense of calmness and trust in people when they see you.
Yes,
And I'm
very
gonna,
much.
as I said, I sometimes don't always do it. So it's not like it's easy. Um, just because I'll be in someone else's brand and I'm doing something and I'm always like done is better than perfect. So everyone's like, my wrong brand guide. But I think there's so much value you showed just in there because there was the font, there was the colors, there was the selection, there was the image. And I mean, to get to that, that's where brand packages like that can actually be a nice high ticket product because
Yes.
it really is important, especially like if she's creating a school, like we all know.
Yeah.
School, that's what we hold. It's an amazing place if you're interested in starting your own community. We'll have a link to share because it's honestly one of the best platforms out there right now for growing a community and a business, really. It's really covers everything. So a lot of amazing value that you shared there. I love the logo with the
Yeah.
little surfboards.
Surfboards. I do too. I love creating that for them. It was a fun project. And I love like brands that are doing like I love the mission of the brand. And the thing about consistency and that's why we have brand guidelines and you can even create your own. You just have to be consistent with like if you're going to use this accent color, don't use it as a body font
Yeah,
color. Like, keep things very separate, but cohesive as a whole picture. But we're not
very
here to
good.
teach you a class in brand guidelines, but we did
No.
want to show
No, but
you
we give
how
tips and tricks. It's like because there's small things if
yeah.
someone's watching, like even like you said, that contrast color, like a lot of times I think people, the one of the mistakes I see is what I love about the brand whenever we're doing an aesthetic is understanding it is a visual path that we're trying to create for
Hmm.
people of where
Hmm.
their eyes are going and using that really like picking a really bold, playful color to kind of hit the button. I think those
Yeah.
were those when I started and really applying that to branding, those were really key elements that make the whole process a little simpler. Once you actually know some of the basic
Yeah.
guidelines, it
Yeah.
does make creating the content and showing up, it just kind of all fits together like a little Rubik's Cube. So
Yeah. Do you
I
want
love
to
that.
show the next example that we can walk them through of a jester brand or it's
Boop, boop. Oh,
called
God.
in other realms, it's called entertainer or jester. But these are the fun brands. These are the Dollar Shave Club, the Poopery brands. We both love Laura Belgray
We do,
of
we do.
Talking Shrimp. If you don't know her, she's an author and she had a course creator. And when she came on the scene, it was her partnership with Marie Forleo, another great personal brand that has, evolved and rebranded many times. But this is just really fun and playful and totally aligns with her personality.
Yeah.
She isn't afraid to drop an F-bomb. She makes fun of things. She tells a lot of great stories and makes you laugh. I
Well,
mean,
even this, according to an unscientific but totes accurate study, like I read that one line and I see like that everything, and I know right away, like I love this girl, right? Even before I
yeah.
move, that's how powerful it can be when you show up and present yourself so that you attract the right people. Because I mean, you introduced me to her. I didn't actually know her, and the minute I fell, and I actually read her emails because I so love the way she writes.
They're the only emails I read, besides ours, of course, but
Yeah. Oh, we write them too. So yeah. But I mean, even like look at the speckling of the font. Like there's so many
yeah, the
small little
glitter.
details.
Hmm.
Yeah. The way she's done it, as I said, and her story of why it was called Talking Shrimp is
Yeah,
actually pretty funny. I mean,
yeah.
unless my
So her,
memory's gone, it was just a URL she'd bought and they were like with her husband and they were like, we have to
yeah.
use it or something.
Yep, and it's in her little tagline right there under copywriting jumbo style by Laura Belgray. And so because her business is called Talking Trip and she has her name in there, that's a smart way for a
Hmm.
personal brand to name it something, but like by or with, that's very clever. But when we're looking at her font choices here, they're really fun, very th the thick fonts that have the effect on them, of course. The colors are, kind of they have that retro vibe too, Sarah, that we
Hmm.
like,
Yep.
as you can see. And even the name of her book, I mean, come on,
Yeah, I
Tough
know.
Titties.
Tough titties. So funny.
So this is a perfect example of an archetype in action, though. The way she writes her copy, the way she shows up, the style of this brand. And you could be a jester and have a whole different vibe on, like you don't have to be retro and all that, but it's usually about how your personality comes through in the writing, in the copy of it, in the pictures you
Hmm.
use.
Absolutely. That's why I say there's so
Mhm.
many. And I love too, as I said, the way she's laid it out. Like even someone a
Yeah.
gesture, but look how much white space she has, and then she has it paired with
Yeah.
nice bold. So it's really this
Kind
this
of
is
reminds, yeah, go ahead, sorry.
no, I was just gonna say it's an experience. Like I've been to this woman's website so many times and I enjoy it every time. I never get bored because it's well laid out. It's an experience like we talked
How do
about
you
up front.
feel engaging with the website,
Yeah,
Sarah?
exactly.
You
Right.
feel
That
it's fun, right? You're happy. It
mhm.
doesn't feel serious, even though she's serious about the work she does. It's funny because with that retro kind of the elements, the graphic design elements, it reminds me of like the retro t-shirts, like
Mhm.
they started selling at like Urban Outfitters and stuff, like with those lines and the colors and stuff. So yeah, she
Retro
totally
vibe is still huge right now.
yeah, yeah, for sure.
And the
Um,
interesting thing, it's kind of like a caveat, but we were talking about, if you're going to do your brand under a name or a business, and you're right, it's smart the way she's done both because it's not necessarily going to be something all of us ever have to think about. But if you ever did want to sell your business, if it's only your name, then it's harder. Whereas if it's a business, it is something that can be transferred later down the road. For most coaches, personal coaches, development coaches, they typically will stick with their name because that's the brand, personal brand recognition they have. But you're
mhm.
right, the way she has both. I mean, she could go either way and show
Yeah,
everybody
it's
just
super
the
fun. So this
prettiest.
is a Jester brand in action that we wanted to show you that has her own like vibe and spin on it. But the interaction, we'd be curious, dear audience, to know how you feel interacting with that site. And it may not be your vibe, like,
Yeah,
and that's
totally.
okay. That
Yeah,
that
we
might
talked
be,
about it in one of our
yeah,
last episodes, like
yeah,
marketing, the whole key aspect. And that's why it's so important that we do land on the one that's most us, because part of our job is to repel the
yeah,
people that we're not aren't going to jive, and it's to me, it's doing them a service because you don't want to enter into a business relationship with someone that's it's awkward, right? And that's why
Yeah.
if you create a brand that's not you, like if you're trying to be like suave and sophisticated and you're like a down to earth kind of like, yo, what's up?
Yeah.
That your audience buys one thing and they get in and they're like, what is this? Like, we're trying to actually give our audience and those who are going to buy from us the best experience prior to them choosing to give us their money and learn from us and be in an experience. And we have to do that. To me, that's integrity, right? Like, I want to be integrous in how that's one of the reasons we did this YouTube as kind of like a talking one because we're like, this is how we show up. This is how we connect with the community. This is how we like to teach with people. This is,
Mhm.
I mean, you're basically seeing exactly who Nicole and I are in these episodes.
Yeah, and to the point of like repelling and attracting, so anyone who's like stiff and not playful and wants to be serious about copywriting would not choose Laura Belgrave. They would go with someone that's maybe a bit more pro and
Yeah,
maybe
like if I was
have
a lawyer, I would probably wouldn't use her.
no, not at all. Like there's a certain type of audience, and if you don't like people like dropping bombs or, writing kind of like risque emails sometimes, you would not choose her. And that's great because that just shows you again, there's like somebody for everybody, right?
Hmm.
So the next example, or the last example that we're going to show today, is a lot of you in the personal branding space may have heard of Jenna Kutcher. She definitely has come on the scene really strong with Pinterest. It kind of like morphed. Like I remember her podcast, the Gold Digger podcast was like the big thing, but she's a photographer. Her background
She
is in,
started, yeah, not even.
yeah,
She just bought a secondhand camera and started a
yeah,
little Photoshop for weddings, and she did so well that people started asking her how. So she
yeah.
started teaching the how of it and did the pot.
Hmm.
And she's really a cool example. I mean, she was on Dean and Tony's. She
Hmm.
was a guest speaker quite a few times. But what I love as her as an example, at the level she is, I mean, this website is a total rebrand
Yes.
from like a year and a half ago.
Yeah, I did a case study on her old one because she's a classic every girl next door, every woman. Like she's one of those people who are like, let's go have a coffee together. She still
Hmm.
feels very down to earth, even though she's, millionaire, right? And
And
yes,
she
this
was very clear
rebrand.
about that. When she
Yeah.
started, she would show up, she'd had her baby and there'd be like spit up on her
Yeah.
sweatshirt and her hair was up in a messy bun. I mean,
Yeah.
it wasn't just a vibe, that was her
Yeah.
whole business brand. So she's a really
Yeah.
cool
And
example.
her look, even like she released a lot of weight,
Hmm.
because she was heavier. And once she started changing in her own appearance, that's when we noticed the brand changed too, to evolve with her. And I think that's really cool because sometimes you do grow or evolve from your brand. It doesn't stay
Hmm.
static. You're not static.
Yeah.
So looking at this now of her site, like her old site had like more like a lot of white space. It had some pops of
Peach.
color,
A lot of
but
peach.
this one is way more colorful than it
Hmm.
used to be. Like this is like a lot of color
Yeah.
going on. But it still feels like
She
you
still
look
feels
at
like the
her,
girl next door,
yeah,
right?
it still feels like the girl next door. I do notice the messaging, actually her copy has changed quite a bit. Like her other messaging, I would say from her other site was more girl next
Yeah.
door because it was like, hey girl, like want to be friends. Like there was all this like
Yeah.
friend,
Like,
like
she said that names I go by, babe, bestie, all that kind of stuff.
yeah. Yeah. So this is like a polished, like not a polished, because I don't want to say she wasn't polished, but like an up-leveled version, as she's evolving. And also we, as women, we get older and we want to maybe present ourselves in a different way too. And she's a pretty successful businesswoman.
Yeah,
So
and she's actually really interesting because she's really branched out.
hmm.
She just keeps, and I think she's also a great example for people to understand. Like, you're never going to start here with
Yeah.
all the things. She didn't. right? But
Yeah.
she, as she grew and made connections and did something and added, and that's where we build to this level. Whereas a lot of new people, I find they look at someone like Jenna and like, oh my God, I need to be like, don't compare yourself to someone who's been in this game for like, I don't even know how many years now. So.
Yeah, a lot. I mean, yeah.
But I
Just
think
like
I love her as an example of someone at that elk who rebranded. So you're never like that's why we say you don't want to be changing it every 2 days because then you don't have the time to build that trust and
yeah.
recognizable brand,
Yeah.
but you're never stuck forever. And I actually think rebrands are incredible marketing like bonanzas you can do, right? To
Yeah,
bring
for
in and
sure.
share. And so I'm always like if once you're ready to go, people get excited and you can share and like big things coming.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
you could see the every woman here in the images too, like her just like hanging out with her kiddo and, you know, romantic time, sharing a moment with her husband, putting up stuff on the wall. Like it's just it's like we're getting a peek into her everyday
Mm-hmm.
life. Blended with some nice stylized shots, of course, which, for branding, that's cool. But she's like, she even says it here, where I'm your mom friend with the backyard garden who also runs a multi-million-dollar business, bakes gluten-free sourdough, and builds big dreams in the margins of nap time. That's her messaging is super aligned there with
Yeah.
the everyone. So yeah, we wanted to show you these brands, and you can always like go check out these sites and look at them a little bit more closely to show you how different personalities especially come through. And like when Sarah and I were doing our branding, it's harder when there's other people involved. You have to meet somewhere in the middle and like we
And
have
translated
fun.
so we both understand because my
Yeah,
70s and your 70s in the beginning were very different.
very
I was like
different. Yeah.
total shag carpet,
Flower
like
power.
you.
You were like more flower power. I
I
I
because
grew up in
that's who I am. I
California
still have like a
being
leather vest
the
from my mother from the 60s,
oh
like to
yeah.
wear with little pockets. Like I'm super flower power.
Yeah, you are. And I'm more like California vintage, Venice. I grew up in the South Bay of California, so Redondo Beach area. And so my retro, very different. So, one step we could share with you guys that Sarah and I did is, and don't like be cautious of your time because you can go down a Pinterest rabbit hole, but just notice what kind of images on Pinterest that you naturally gravitate towards. Like if you were to design a brand that really felt like you being expressed visually, look for that and create your little, board that has it, and then look for like, is there some vibe or aesthetic that is more obvious than others? Because what Sarah and I have seen and the other business we were in together as colleagues is people having kind of a hodgepodge. It's like potluck dinner of brand boards.
Well, I hope that by them seeing this and us walking
Hmm.
through a bit, they will start to recognize when they're looking at brands they like, the
Hmm.
story and the cohesiveness. Because if you can
Exactly.
find three, four, five brands that you love, whether they be online, whether they be products you use that as a touch point. Like, what is attracting you about them? Look
Hmm.
how they're using the colors. Look at the types of font, right? Like most of us just
Hmm.
have all this information that zooms at us and we don't even register that all these pieces are at play. And once you do see
Hmm.
it, I mean, that's when I love commercials. I love walking by stores because I'm constantly looking at what kind of brand is this? What's their character? What's their, and if you like them or not. So I think if you guys are interested too, drop in the thing if you guys want us to show you how to actually curate a kind of Pinterest board. If you guys drop
Yeah.
something and say you'd love to, we could totally do an episode on
Yeah, we
actually
could do an
having
episode on that for sure, and
yeah,
what to look for to make things cohesive. Because we can even show you what we did when we started brainstorming our board. I still have that board,
yeah.
and how we pulled things out that felt like, okay, this is direction we're not gonna do pastels or like we do love the vibrant colors, but we're not gonna do too much pink or, much to Sarah's
I
dismay, she
wanted
wanted.
fuchsia.
Yeah,
I
you
lost
want a
that. I
magenta or
lost that.
fuchsia. Yeah. But even, just looking at things and trying to ascertain, that's such a big word for me to use. ascertain like the personality of the brand. I think, especially for people that don't know archetypes yet, and like, I can do it because I've been studying it for so many years. But if you can't understand archetype, if you're not there yet, that's fine. But look at the personality and see,
Hmm.
is it quirky? Is it elegant? Is it romantic? And those types of words that like might come out to you give you a
And,
lot of clues.
and again, if you guys want, take the quiz. We have a free quiz which
Yes.
unlocks a whole smorgasbord of some brand board ideas and
Hmm.
images, and you can see what your code name is, and you get a full PDF with like a little mini breakdown of all the different ones. So you can kind of, even if you use that as a base of like, what's this brand? What do I guess, right? And try and play with it so that you really start to understand and move through, because we have aspects a little bit of everything, but you really will find there's a core of who you are and how you show up. And once you can really kind of get that energy, then the picking of the colors and the fonts and the typography, it makes more sense because you know where you're coming from. You're not just, you're not going grocery shopping when you're hungry. You've actually satisfied the who, and now you're going
Hmm.
to get what you need to
Hmm.
build that proper kind of outline. So awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I
Well,
think
we
that's
give
not a
you,
bad
we've
place
given
to.
you, yeah, we've given you lots to share today. Like share what like takeaways you had about the brands that we showed you. Talk about, you can comment like what do you feel your brand personality is? Do you want us to do an episode on like Pinterest brand mood board to kind of get ideas? We'd be happy to. And anything else you're kind of interested in learning about, knowing it, we're here for it. And we also have a really great community where we talk about this stuff. We help you feel into your archetypal alignment. We call it a code name. And, we're always there to support and guide in any way we can. But most of all, we want to have fun too
Mm-hmm.
while we're doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Like I started
Exactly.
with, the creative part is really fun, and it juices you up and gets the batteries recharged. So that's an important aspect of this space we're creating as well. So
Absolutely. Absolutely. And yeah, we'll leave it at that because there's so much. And
yeah,
so we'll drop the link. So if you're interested
yeah,
for the freebie, for the community, and again, we're always interested. We want to connect. We are even here on YouTube. We want to create a community here as well. So
yeah.
drop what you, and if there's any brands you think are super cool and you want us to see, drop them down. We're happy to take a peekaboo at them too and get a feel. There's enough to go around for everybody. We don't hoard brands. Okay, everybody, that is it for us. Have a
See you
beautiful
next
day, and
time.
we will see you next time.